you know, this is the fourth, I think, the fourth town hall that we're having. We had 3 last spring. And really, it's more for me to try to follow up or to listen to you, to tell you what we are facing, and to try to follow up on some of your questions. As you know, all of the questions that we got before have been answered. They're posted on the website that we developed, and I think it's strategy.unm.edu. Is that correct? president.unm.edu. That's what the questions are. So if you don't get your questions answered for any reason today, or if something I don't know what the answer is, I try to follow up on this. So today what I wanted to talk to you about, and I have with me EVP Harris and Provost White, is how to begin the conversation about re-engineering the university. I'll speak for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then I will open it to questions to see if any of these resonate or if you have other concerns. By the way, I wanted also to welcome Regent Hosmer, who's in the audience today, who's with us, and you know, if you have any questions maybe that I cannot answer, maybe I'll kick it to Regent Hosmer. Anyway, so I believe now is the time to start the conversation for re-engineering the university in response to external forces such as demographic trends and shifts, socioeconomic forces, the financial pressures, the changing nature of our students and their educational needs, as well as advances in the science of learning and in teaching. To begin this conversation, I presented first to the UNM Executive Cabinet on June 2017, and subsequently held a senior administrative leadership retreat in July 2017, where we discussed the challenges and opportunities for UNM across the various university units. Now, we're beginning to widen this conversation to faculty, staff, and students during various meetings in town halls such as this one. And everything we talk about, all information, updates, associated documents, reading material, etc., are posted on strategy.unm.edu. So if you go there, you will find the minutes from our leadership retreat, some of the presentation or all of the presentations that were there, and so on. So, I'm sorry? Some of the next steps here that I see us going through is first to appoint a steering committee to be led by, and I have asked Mike Dewar, a retiree, UNM retiree, to lead that. We need a staff support. We had a staff member, a retired staff member that we asked, and initially she had agreed, but for personal reasons she declined. So we're going to have a staff support, probably from our office or the provost office. We're going to present to the Dean's Council. That's TBD. I have presented to the Faculty Senate on August 22 an earlier version of this discussion. I'm going to present to the Staff Council, TBD, and we're having these town halls today here, tomorrow at the HSC. Actually, September 11th is on HSC, not tomorrow. I'm going to present to ASUNM. I'm going to present to GPSA. Then, after that, with the help of the steering committee, I want to appoint groups to focus on, and these are examples where I think the challenges are or where we should focus on. One is to look at the demographic, socioeconomic trends and challenges. You know, tell us where we are. We have a lot of data from the national studies on that to see what kind of students we're getting, the type of students who are coming to UNM. Is there growth in one area? Because we know across the board that we don't have growth. The sustainability of higher ed and UNM's current business models, the financial models as well as the internal structures, the changing nature of our students and their learning needs, and then advances in the science of learning and teaching that can be anticipated. The reason I'm listing these is because another university, when they did something similar, these are some of the ones that they have. It doesn't mean these are the only ones. It doesn't mean these are set in stone. What it means are going to be issues for us like they are for many others. Then what I'd like to do is have this committee organize groups, huddles, larger meetings to brainstorm and to discuss ideas with individuals within the university, but also outside of the university. Former officials, former presidents of universities, you know, we have access to many of them in the state and outside of the state. I like, as we did for when I became provost, I started the academic strategic plan. I brought some national speakers to come to UNM and use that as an experience, both for our students and for our community, to look at the challenges from a national level, and some of the folks who have expertise and research in this area could help us, so that we can position UNM for academic success that can be financially sustainable in the future. And in the future, I don't mean 5 years, I don't mean next year, I mean really 25, 50 years. You know, the model that we have right now is getting to be outdated. I would like to use the first 6 months, i.e. until January 2018, to gather this information. We have a lot of the data, but we may need to do other things to write the reports in the various focus areas, whatever the focus areas are, and use the following 6 to 12 months to design an implementable plan, something that can get the buyout from both the regions as well as the others that need to actually do the work. My role, as I see it in this effort, and I'm stealing heavily here from an article in the Harvard Business Review by Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE. It's titled "How I Remade GE." If you look at it, you know, I think it was in my last PWP. My role, as I see it, is to provide discipline and focus. I know we're going to talk about a lot of different things. It's a big undertaking, but I think I need to be the one to say let's stick to this and let's focus, rather than trying to see to look at things that we have no control or no opportunity to change. He called it. Jeff said a leader needs to soak, and what he meant by that is think before acting. Don't just react to everything. You know, these days, you know, we have a lot of things coming at us from every angle, especially with social media, and we tend to react. And you know, I'm asked almost on an hourly basis to take a position on something. I think when we're looking at issues such as remaking or re-engineering the university, the last thing we need is to react to the ripples or to every tweet and everything that we hear. We do have experts at this university. I pledge to the faculty and to others to use our experts. You know, I'm not planning. I don't have a desire to use consultants, except in very specific areas if we needed to do something very specific that we don't have expertise in, something in terms of you know, comparing our benefits to national norms and so on. That, you know, we may have some of it inside, but some of those experts outside may have or will have a little bit access to better data, or more data, I should say. I think part of my role is to try to convince you that this is existential. And you know, I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years. I don't think it's exaggerating to say if we continue doing what we're doing, we will be a shadow of ourselves in the next 5 years. We cannot continue to do everything that we're doing and to do it with the funding that we're receiving. So we either have to change what we're doing, or we have to get funding from elsewhere. My job is to encourage you, or to try to figure out how to be resilient in the face of challenges. We need staying power. Once we commit to something, we need to take some risks, but we also need to stay with it. You know, some of these things will not bear fruit for years. I wanna tell you today something that it took us 4 years to get to this point. 4 years ago, we started this effort to try to increase the graduation rate. We started at 14.5%. Right now, the semi-official numbers are 29% in 4 years, more than double. But that took 4 years. The first year we went up to 15 or 16, then to 17, then to 19, then to 21, and now we're 29%. And we're on our way, if we stick with it, to do better than that. But I think this is one of the things that we need to keep in mind. It's not a 1-year effort or a 6 months effort. I'll listen, but I'll act. I know in some cases, you know, I guess the no plan survives its first encounter with the enemy, or as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's what I think is you know, we're gonna have to to really adapt, but we need to have a plan, and we stick with the gist of it or with the main thing. But things are going to change. The external pressures are going to change. Politically, we're going to have changes. Economically, the state could go through other things, but some of these are going to be things we need to react to, and others are not. We need to stick to our plan. Last but not least, embrace new kinds of talents, of culture, and new ways of doing things. We have to be able to react faster in some areas. So how would I do that? Well, if I were king for a day, if I had all the power, if I were, deciding not as a president, but as an absolute monarch, here's what I would look into immediately. I would look at the feasibility of 4-day, 4-week to see if that's something that can benefit financially, but also efficiently, the university. I would re-engineer our processes using something called service blueprinting. I want to look at things that are, sometimes people complain about some things taking forever. A lot of times these are because of external regulations, but sometimes it's because the way we do things. Service blueprinting is the way, or is the design idea that you look at it from the point of view not of the provider of the service, but of the receiver of the service, of the user. And I think if we do that, we will find out a lot of issues in the way we deliver our services. I would go for more online and for unique degrees and programs. I would recruit and serve different types of students. I think we have to really go very quickly after non-traditional veterans, distance learners, etc. And then I would look at different schedules and credentials. Maybe, allow people, or try to see if we can have people work 2 semesters. They don't have to be fall and spring. Maybe it's spring and summer, and take the other off. This is for those who are on 9 months, for example. I would look at shorter terms to see how we can do things that will be a shorter term. There's no reason why it has to be 15 weeks. In the summer we do courses in 8 weeks. I would look at trying to do some of those things. We are doing them online with some programs, and I would look at some of those. I would also look at more distributed governance models. What I mean by that is I would distribute a lot more of the responsibility to the lowest possible level. It could be the college, maybe it's a department. But with that comes responsibility. It's not just that you get more power to do things. With that, you will have to be more accountable for certain things rather than saying, well, I didn't know what I was doing. So in order to do so, we really need to if we want to be more agile and trying to do things. I would try to use open source material in teaching. This is one of those things where I think we still married to the idea that you need to buy these books at very expensive. They're becoming very expensive. There are a lot more open sources. The bookstore is doing more of that. But I would say, this is our students pay, I don't know, 500 to maybe more than 1,000. I have no idea. There are a lot of places where we can use open sources. These are ideas. These are not what I'm saying. Go and let's figure out how to do these things. But I'm saying if I were sitting as part of this committee, this is what I would do. With that, this is my comments or my introductory comments on what re-engineering the university would look like from my point of view. And now I'll open it to questions either for me or for the Provost and David Harris. Thank you. We can leave now. Yeah. So that people outside can hear you. Yeah.
UNM, along with several other universities, relies heavily.
Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jessica Escabel. I work for the biology department, and I'm also a staff council member.
Yeah.
Several universities rely heavily on adjunct for instruction, and I was reading recently that they don't really have a lot of support. They don't receive benefits. There's no security. They're hired by term. Do you have any ideas or plans on how to better support the adjunct or kind of revision how instruction is implemented?
So I'll say some things based on my memory from when I was in the provost office, but I may call on somebody in the provost office to say a couple of words on it. So you're right. many universities right now are relying more and more on adjuncts who are paid very little to teach a course. UNM has tried to protect that as much as possible. Our percentage of adjuncts is way below the national average. What we did, however, is we created these lecturer positions, which are longer term. They're multiple years, and there's a growth. There's a ladder in there that you can move from assistant lecturer to senior lecturer and so on. I agree with you. I mean, this is one of the questions right now. How do you deliver quality education at a scale and try to be able to do it without breaking the bank? Because really, a tenure track faculty is providing other things beyond the teaching, just the regular teaching in the classroom. Advising, research, service, commitment, long-term commitment, and so on. Many adjuncts do the same. Many adjuncts do the same, but they're focusing on teaching. The question is, when you try to get the numbers to match, what many universities have figured out is that the easiest way to do it is like a doctor, for example, is more expensive than a PA, or the PA is more expensive than a nurse, and the nurse maybe is more expensive than a nurse assistant. They're trying to divide that workload and get to do the first thing or some of the things that can be done by others with someone else. This should be part of the conversation as we try to re-engineer the university. There are some models out there where they say some people come out of college and they want to work 50%. They're tenured, but they want to work 50% for whatever reason. For whatever reason. It could be family reason. It could be, I had a professor who would work 1 year and take a year off. He made a deal after he became tenure, unpaid, and go and do whatever he wanted. So if that's the case, to look at more, more agile or more different ways of trying to get people to deliver the quality education while serving the other parts of the university mission. Because if we were to just do teaching, it would be really, really, really inexpensive if we were just doing teaching. If we didn't have everything else that we have to do, not just research, but support and service and entertainment and so on and so forth, it's a lot cheaper. That's why the for-profits, were making money. They would charge you something for a basic function, it's an important function, but they don't need the other pieces of it. And I think as a university, as a public research university and as a flagship university, our mission encompasses more than delivering the cheapest education possible. But at some point, this level of trying to figure out, do I put a full professor making, I don't know, 100K into this classroom to teach 6 or 7 people, or do I hire an adjunct, 100K a year, so, whatever, 50K a semester, let's say, or do I hire an adjunct at 5,000? From the bottom line perspective, if our purpose is to become more efficient, I have a lot of ways to become more efficient. Starting with, you don't need a president, you just need a couple of people who can move things around.
Or an adjunct president.
An adjunct president can do the job probably. Yeah.
Hello, name's David Weitzel, nuclear engineering graduate student.
Okay.
Nowadays, on places like YouTube, you can find entire course series of lectures online, and the only real obstacle nowadays standing between an entirely open source university experience is accreditation.
Yeah. Right.
What are your thoughts on how to adjust into a world where university could be essentially free for many people?
So have you heard him? Have you heard the question? So a lot of the stuff, not just on YouTube, but many universities, including UNM, we put a lot of stuff online free. If the purpose of education was simply to get that information, then we shouldn't have had universities when we had books. Because that's the same thing. We had books, now we have them online. All of these things are really another version of having the information. Now, the next part is how do you handle this pressure? That's exactly why we need to be looking at different ways of doing it. Partly, it has to be that we need to be in that space trying to both provide added value. The reason people come to the university, and a reason, because there are different groups, right? I mean, the traditional student. By the way, are you graduate or undergraduate? Graduate. Okay. So you've already gone through the rigors of the 4-year undergraduate nuclear engineering program. A lot of people who come in from high school, they're not ready. If I said, okay, go watch it on YouTube, I don't know how much of that is going to be for a lot of people. Now, one of my kids will do it, and he'll do fine. The other one would need a lot more, basically guidance from a teacher and so on. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is what the professors provide, or what the university experience provides, is way beyond simply looking up the material. I'm looking at one of my colleagues here who teaches music, and she can tell you that you can read a lot of music, or you can try to do it, and you're not going to become as good as some of her students. But there are others. There are other things that I think the university experience goes beyond. Not just what's available information-wise, but also what's the experience in the classroom. And I think that's the piece that when we talk, well, in some other forum, I ask people, what do you think the university is for? And some people told me it's to get people to get better jobs. Well, that certainly is for some people, right? Others said it's to create better citizens. Others said it's to, educate the whole person, and so on and so on and so on. So when you look at the university as a whole, you say, which one of these missions is more important? Well, the main mission is educating, the state and the country. Those are the should say. But that includes having events such as this. That includes arguing with somebody of a different opinion. That includes meeting someone from a different country. That includes a lot of these other things that I think they're not going to be replaced anytime soon, even if you had the whole knowledge, which you do. You do. I mean, you can go to, MIT OpenCourseWare or many of these other courses, and you can take a lot of courses if you want to. In fact, there was somebody who actually completed an MBA program by taking courses from different places online. Well, that's not the average person. It's not even the top person. It's one person out of the tens of millions who are doing this. So I think by looking at all the functions of the university and all the people that the university serves, the learners, and this is part of what I was talking about, the science of learning and teaching, and the different needs. When you look at it from that point of view, the university could opt, for example, to go more into that area and to do a lot less in something else. So that's definitely on my mind, but I'm not one to think that in 5 years or in 25 years we will not have, or we should not have the brick and mortar that we have today, or the faculty.
Cripps from biology. Thanks for doing this. I had a sort of comment and a question about enrollments, and I think we've been bashed a little bit over the last couple of years for falling enrollments, and in some ways I think that's a bit short-sighted, because in terms of where our enrollments now, we're back where we were sort of pre-recession times, and in fact our funding has been about the same as it was pre-recession times, ironically.
A bit less,
so
yeah.
I think that it's been sort of a wash, and the observation that the criticism that our enrollment's falling is a bit of a shame, because it doesn't take the long view, and it also doesn't recognize the achievements, like you say, of who actually increased the graduation rate. So the question I guess I have is it your goal that you want to see the enrollment increase further, and how would you like to go about that? And then the comment I would have is that I've had plenty of students that I've worked with over the years, including students who work in my lab, and we've had a number of students from out of state, and they're terrific. So I think getting people out of state who can come to UNM for a reasonable value, and get a good education here for a reasonable value is an opportunity, as long as we're not excluding New Mexico residents from getting an opportunity.
Yeah.
I was also wondering if, for example, kids of alumni could be given in-state rates wherever they live, something like that. So a way to encourage enrollment. So
let me start. Thank you, Richard, for the question and the comment. The first thing is let me talk about enrollment. To me, if we were not depending on the tuition, in order to deliver on our mission, enrollment would not be a factor in the equation. That's we have a mission to deliver on, but there is no mission without a margin. We try to be zero margin, right? We try to be exactly where we have to balance our budget. So the question about whether enrollment should increase or enrollment should stay the same and so on, frankly, that's one of the discussions. Should UNM is about what? Is 30 here, about 27,000, maybe 30,000, depending, 27,000 FTE or 30,000 students. What matters is really the student credit hours, and actually more than that, the actual dollar amount, the tuition that it nets, plus what we get from the state. The sum of the two is what we need in order to pay, to move, to get some programs, to start things and so on. That's what matters. Enrollment is an input to the student credit hours, which is an input to the dollar amount in tuition. So one of the questions, that should be asked during this re-engineering, should UNM go the ASU, the Arizona State route? Should we go to 60,000? Now, how do we do that? Well, Arizona was growing. Arizona was growing when he started doing that. But then the reputational, the investment in trying to do certain things got the reputation up that right now, their enrollment is not growing as much from within the state, but they have 20,000 people online. They have Starbucks paying to take courses and so on. Now again, that's a fundamental question. Would the university, would the people at the university be encouraged or excited about, well, I'm getting a lot more money from these other sources that could help, that will help in my mission in here, but I'm not doing the same thing that I was doing before. So that's the question to me. It's not my goal to increase it or decrease it. My question, and President Frank said it at one time, right-size the university. My question is, once we have this mission which we agree on, and hopefully through this re-engineering we redefine some parameters, at that point we're going to have a dollar amount that we need to achieve this mission. Right now it's about 300 million. It's been dropping. It's 300 million in order to do what we're doing today. That means no raises. That means no new things. We can't do anything. So I would like to have maybe about 10% or 5% increase a year. 3% could be for taking care of the natural order of things, and 2 or 3% to be able to give raises and so on. 5%, that's 15 million a year. Year after year after year. We need 15 million more every year. It can come from enrollment, or it can come from somewhere. So that's one. The next question is regarding the alumni, the idea of that. I think you sent it to me at one time, or somebody sent me the same idea. You must be talking about it in biology or someplace over, maybe at a bar someplace, because it came back from someone. And I did ask the question, and I don't remember now what it was about, do we do things for alumni, or can we do things for alumni to get them, to give them a credit, or to give them in-state tuition, for example. Frankly, right now we do have a lot of scholarships that if you're qualified from outside the state, we do have a lot of this. We don't reject, as far as I know, we don't have a lot of people coming in, who are very qualified, again, without taking from things inside. So we have two programs. We have one which is the Amigo Scholarship, which is, I think we have about 1,000 of them, 1,000, and we give them out to out of state and out of the country. We have international students who are on Amigo Scholarships. Those are, they make you in-state. About 2 years ago, we instituted a program also for countries that will send us a certain number of students, and we had a sliding scale that gets you somewhere between in-state and out of state. I think the minimum. Is that about right? 11,000? Yeah, and the out of state is 20,000. We have a few takers, including some of my own family who are on, they came in because they decided, for 11,000, they can't get a good education for 11,000 even in Lebanon. And then we have other things like we have the WICHE scholarship, and then we included the regions about 2 years ago approved to go to the other side. So it's not just for alumni. We do have much of that. Now, we can do more for the alumni by either recruiting, and we have a couple of people from the alumni office here. Let's see. I see somebody from the alumni office. Where are they? Nobody wants to be. Oh, there. Oh, yeah. Here you go. So do we have something special for alumni like that? Okay. So maybe as we're asking them for money for other reasons, we say, do you know that you can, we do have many alumni children, I mean, I know a couple, I don't know if there are many, but I know a couple of them who are going to UNM, and they're out of state. These are alumni out of state. But I believe that's the type of ideas when I say we need to think about different things. Now, at the end of the day, however, remember, it cost us about 13,000, no, maybe that's what we asked for the out of state or for this international. It costs us about 13,000 to educate a student, 13,000. Anything below 13,000, somebody else is paying for, either the state or someone else. So that's the magic number right now, if you're thinking about what we can go to. Now, 13,000 is a great education for a flagship institution that in recent times has been in the news for good things and for not so good things, but the good things is the one that people hopefully are paying attention to. So I think 13,000, if you say to somebody, you can get a flagship, you can get a really good education for 13,000 from out of the country or out of the state, that's a hell of a lot. Well, that's less than many states charge for in-state. So that is one of the, I don't want to say just the options, but that's one of the trajectories that we're on. We're still much lower than others in terms of the number of students from out of state. We're still much lower, than Washington and Wisconsin and others. The big flagships, the Michigans, the Wisconsins and so on, Colorado, they're living off the out of state, but they're coming to the end of that model. What's happening at Colorado is that you're about 40,000 or 40. I mean, now you're in the same league as many of the privates, so they cannot raise it much more, and that's so. At least in our case, the advantage is maybe we can skip one step and try to get to a place where we can get out of state. But then the problem with that is, if they leave the state, then you just lost. The brain drain goes the other way too. You get them in here. What's good for UNM may not be necessarily good for the state. We need to align that too a little bit better. What's good for UNM is getting a lot of students in and graduating them, and then if they leave the state, that's not really what the state is interested in, or at least that's not a good investment by the state, because anything less than 13,000 or so the state is investing in, is putting money. Somebody is paying for that beyond the ones that beyond what the family and the parents are doing.
Yes, my name is Marjorie Crow, and I work at the Department of Art, and I'm also on the staff council. And I don't really have a question. I have an invitation for
For everybody or just for me?
for everybody.
Oh, good.
Everybody.
Well, that's great.
For our grad students' open studios at the Art Annex, which is being threatened, but we would like to show everybody what they're doing there. And it's September 28th from 7 to 9 p.m. And we're attracting fantastic grad students because of this, who are also some of our less expensive instructors right now.
Yeah.
It's like they're like 33 out of 89 instructors are grad students. And so we would like
So September 28th, 7 to 9,
yes,
Art
I-
Annex, free of charge?
Yes, of course.
Ah, see, you should charge something. That way you can get, no, free of charge. Free of charge.
People to come.
See, that's the problem. We give everything away. We just want to be nice, and yeah, it's good. It's great.
I just thought of something else when you were talking. I used to live in Washington, D.C., and they had a program there because they didn't have any big public university. So, I mean, when I was there, they were paying $5,000 for a student at a public university at any other state, and I've read recently that that's gone up to $10,000. So
Who is paying 5,000?
the District of Columbia.
They would pay for
for
people to
their
go out of
students.
state?
Yes. So it might be a good
You-
place to recruit.
To recruit from there. I'm like, we can't afford to pay our students to go elsewhere.
No, I meant to.
No, okay. That sounds like a good idea. We do have a program, by the way. Let's see. I saw Julia Conrad in here in the audience. So Dr. Conrad went to the University of Texas, Austin, funded by the state of New Mexico, correct? So we do have this program still in existence, and I think, would you guarantee the position, or you had to apply when you come back? It was a handshake agreement, okay? But Dr. Conrad, I mean, we do have these programs that we send our students at some, I think it's only at the PhD. No, actually, maybe even in the medical field or the legal. I know the state has this program, and we take advantage of it every year by a couple of people or so on, right? Yeah. Any questions for my colleagues in here? Because, you know, they're getting bored and.
We wouldn't want that. Sarah Nezar, I work with the Office of University Advisement.
Right.
One of my concerns is I'm very pleased about.
Could you get closer? Sorry.
Ollie? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased about the university's research into reconfiguring our goals and our needs. One of my concerns, however, is right now we've already slightly begun, but the process of reaccreditation is right among us. And
Right.
I think long term, the research we're doing on the university's future will address a lot of the concerns for the accreditation process.
Right.
But I'm wondering if there is any plans to maybe have some overlap on those two processes,
Right.
and kind of how
Right.
we're moving forward with the accreditation process at the moment.
So you noticed that I said 6 months and 12 months, that's about 18 months. That would be kind of after the accreditation. That's the reason why I think it's but you're absolutely right. A lot of the data, a lot of the research, and a lot of the accreditation process has been going on. The affirmation of accreditation has been going on for about 5 years now, 6 years. So we're not, you know, by the time they visit, we would have had 7 years of making sure that things are going or are delivered to the Higher Learning Commission. Since you brought it up, you know, I mean, this is a big deal. The accreditation is a big deal. This is the accreditation for the whole university, including branches, including the health sciences. Every single academic program at this university will be reviewed, and then hopefully the university will be affirmed. The accreditation will be reaffirmed. There is about, is it 9 criteria? 5 criteria? 5 criteria, and they're posted on, would it be accreditation.unm.edu? Yeah, I think it's called accreditation.unm.edu. Many of you have been involved in this process for a while. When I was in the Provost office, I was, you know, almost weekly involved with it. I'm still involved in one aspect of it, but it's a big deal. I think the information and the data and the reports that are coming out of that will certainly inform, because, you know, they will highlight where some of the issues are as we move forward. What I was hoping with this effort of re-engineering the university, and I had started talking to President Frank about it and to others, including Regent Hosmer and others, about 2 years ago, is that the trends, you know, there are things that we face at UNM, and there are things that are way bigger than UNM, way bigger than the state, you know, things around public higher ed, global forces that are forcing us to try to examine the model we have. So when we started looking at it 2 years ago, we found a lot of data by a lot of research and a lot of people who started something, you know. But then, you know, I also noticed that we're always, every year at UNM, we're looking at it every April, May, we're looking at our budget, and we're saying, oh my God, you know, we need, you know, to find 5 million here or 2 million there or 1 million there and so on. So my argument has been that, you know, we're always going to be, you know, just looking in the immediate, unless we try to step back and take this longer term view. But then when you get something, you know, you need to implement it. And you know, we're implementing well on UNM 2020, you know, even if people don't hear much about it, we're going to report some of these things. We focused on student success, and we moved faster than any other university in the United States in the student success arena. In 4 years, going from 14.5% to 29% is faster than any other university has ever done in such a time. The 6 years is cracking 50, pushing 50 right now, but it's on its way to 60 according to our models, because we know if 29% or, you know, 29% are graduating in 4 years. We can predict what it's going to be in 6 years and so on. So we're going to get to 60, up from about 44, 45%. All of those were things that were intentional. They didn't just happen because, you know, a couple of people said, let's focus on this. It was something that the university leadership and all of you worked on it. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we couldn't get everybody on board. We moved in some things, and then people either jumped on board or decided this is not something they want to participate in. But at the end of the day, the value of the degree of the University of New Mexico will increase, which means more people would want to come here, which means some of these pressures that we're facing right now that could be because of declining enrollment will be, you know, remedied by having a group or more people who want our product, who want to be here. We do have a lot of other things to offer, especially now when, you know, you look at what's going on in the Atlantic with all of the hurricanes and with some of the other things, you know, the natural disasters that other places, you know, we could have done something really sneaky and tried to poach some of the students from South Texas. We didn't. We actually offered to people, if they want to come here free, we will do it. During Hurricane Katrina, many of you may know this, but I bet most of you don't. We took on 50 students, and we didn't charge them 1 penny. We taught 50 students 1 semester, some for 2 semesters. The University of New Mexico absorbed that cost, and then when some of these students tried to go back, their institutions tried to charge them for the time that they spent at the University of New Mexico. And we had to fight their institutions. So a lot of these things that we do, that the university does, again, because of all of you. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know who the president was at the time. Obviously, it was a decision made at the highest level. But, you know, they were probably showed up in your classrooms or in your offices, and we served them for, I think it was a year for many of them. Some of them stayed at UNM, but we didn't try to poach them. We made an agreement with their institutions. Look, we're here to help you, not to try to take your students away. You know, we could be advertising in South Texas, and we could be advertising in Miami right now to say, come to the sunshine, and you know, but that's not who we are, right? I mean, we wanna advertise when the times are good, but we're not going to try to do that thing and try to say, but you know, we need to get the students at all cost.
Hi, my name is Barbara Rodriguez. I'm Chair of Speech and Hearing Sciences. I have been increasingly concerned about the staff and their workload given the staff hiring moratorium. Could we have an update on that and whether or not it's achieved its financial goals, and if we can look forward to it being lifted anytime soon?
So first, there was one question in a prior meeting about staff given more workload and whether we can pay them more. And I went back and checked with HR, and I'm pleased to report that this has been instituted. I don't know if your HR folks have been aware, but you know, we've had it. It was approved when? I don't know. Okay, so it will go out in the HR newsletter, but it's been approved that if somebody gets more responsibility or more, you know, somebody leaves and, you know, we divide the work, you know, that's what I said at the time, and you know, I was told that only maybe in your office, not across the university. I went and checked, and indeed, there wasn't a policy about it. It was left to the supervisor, but there is a policy right now on it that people could get more, could get paid more will get paid more, you know, when they get this. So specifically regarding the freeze, well, I mean, today we're still not able to lift the freeze, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that you know, our budget, the current budget, is depending exactly on having these savings. The options were to either lay people off or take out some things, don't do some things in some areas, or as people retire, try to distribute the load and so on. Now, we revisit this, I think, on a monthly basis. How often do you do this? What do you look at it? On a monthly basis. Yeah. Right, and you know, it's not an absolute freeze, meaning you make the case and you try to get it to a level that, you know, somebody will be able to, or will agree that this is, you know, absolutely needed. We do have people being hired, but, you know, we're trying to make sure that that piece of it, in trying to make the budget, remains in place until we're able to basically balance this gap that we had. You know, in the future, as we try to do this to re-engineer the university, it may be that the number of staff is either too low in some areas or too high in some areas. I don't know. I mean, some of the things that I'm asking people to look at, you know, when I talk about, for example, use open source material, that doesn't affect the staff, but that affects the revenue source to the university. There's about $1 million that comes in from people buying books at the university, students buying books. That has to be made up someplace. You know, if we save the students money, you know, how do we make that up? And those are the things, you know, you push on one place of this university, you have something pop up at another place. In this particular case, I wish I could tell you, you know, it's all lifted, you know, but it's not. But what the good news, if there is a good news to this, is that we are very much in the mode that we can reward people for taking on more responsibilities or more tasks, and that to me is, you know, I would rather have happier people or people who are paid more than a lot of people who are not paid well.
Hi, I'm Terry Horger. I'm with Sustainability Studies. I guess my questions are for Dr. White and Mr. Harris. With regard to being intentional and strategic, I was reading the report that Terry Babbitt said something about with the international students that are being recruited, that the return on investment hasn't been as great as anticipated. So the question is, in terms of being intentional and strategic, is that something that the university is going to continue to pursue?
Yes, we're trying to look at our strategies in that area and international. I mean, some of the things that we're doing is looking at the MOUs that we have, memorandum of understandings with other schools across overseas, and trying to get more out of those relationships. So where we do have productive relationships with those schools, maybe start earlier, the freshman, sophomore level, recruit cohort groups, make sure they have the language skills and so forth they need to be here to be successful, but go deeper where we know we've got good working relationships, both with faculty and with students. Okay. And it really kind of assessing, so we're not taking as much of a shotgun type of approach. Okay. We're kind of diluting our efforts. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. But we have seen growth in international, and we do see that as an ongoing opportunity, because there is the limited demographics here in New Mexico, and that's one of the places where we could potentially be growing if we're doing it the right way.
I think what you're referring to is also that we made a large investment into physical spaces in a couple of countries, and those have not lived up. So we cut our losses on those things, you know, and so we are, you know, so the international is still a priority, looking for programs such as what the Provost just mentioned. You know, they had 60, you know, you want to talk about your program or? But you're Terry is absolutely right that at one time we were in negotiations or in discussions to try to put a center, a physical center in China in particular. We got rid of that, and the investments have not really been, you know, we didn't get the return on investment from that particular initiative. But this is what I was saying about, you know, being able to pivot or to try to listen and act, you know. Right. Things change, you know. Had we been there 10, 15 years ago, I think we would have seen a different investment as other people have.
Well, and just to add on, the President just mentioned, we did close our office in China because we were looking at the budget this last year, and the return on investment wasn't there, so that decision was made. And what he's saying is we're pivoting more towards the relationships of faculty members with faculty in those other countries and seeing what we can
So
get
maybe
out of those.
Mr. Harris can answer this question, too, as regard to the external campuses like Taos, Los Alamos, et cetera, from a business standpoint and a business model standpoint, you know, how efficient and productive is it to have those outside campuses where if, let's say, you were to really take a look at their productivity and their enrollments and et cetera, and potentially either scaling back or cutting them, you know, shutting them down altogether, trying to force those students to either come directly to this campus or to take more online courses. Is that something that you've considered or taken a look at?
Actually, there was a statute adopted a number of years ago that permitted local communities to align themselves with motherships based on local initiative. There would have to be a referendum locally. These smaller branches would have to tax themselves. They'd have to have local funding base, and they really don't draw funding from the University of New Mexico. They draw funding from local tuition, from local property taxes, and from the state funding formula. Now, I think there's an element of what you're saying that is important, and that is by them existing, are they drawing state funding that could be available to us?
Right.
I think that's a really good point.
Right.
So let me try to address that also. So there's an effort right now from the higher education department to look at all the access points in the state of New Mexico. Those include branches, but they also include some of the other schools. But just to underline what EVP Harris mentioned, their budget is totally separate from ours. You know, they have the money that comes from the state, they have tuition dollars, and they have mill levy. Now, we do provide them with services under a service agreement, and they pay us some amount, and we negotiate this periodically. So, you know, there are two places where somebody could make the point, well, there's resources being taken either from the state level or are they drawing students? The first one, you know, I can see a point, you know, but then by looking at the access mission of many of these, you know, a lot of people in the state would say, look, you know, they're not going to drive from Taos. Or the student that they're, you know, their mission, by the way, is very different from the university, very different. They overlap and try to get the first 2 years and transfer to us. But many of their students, what they do is they take few courses, they get a certificate, they go to work. That's not something that the University of New Mexico is doing or should be doing, you know, as a public research university. The other place where they could be taking the money is, as I mentioned, could it be that, you know, would it be better to do things online with them? Well, possibly. In some cases we do. And in other cases, again, the type of student and the type of courses that are being taught may or may not lend themselves. You know, if you're teaching a course on welding or a course on, you know, some of the other areas that they have, which A, we don't have, B, you know, they're not really ready for online. So this idea that they are you know, a drain on us is at best nuanced and at most probably wrong. They're not really, you know, and if they are, you know, their total budget is something like $40 million, I think is what they get from the state. So still money, but it's not really, I think, as it's not like the University of New Mexico is sending money over at main campus. By the way, if you talk to people from those places, they think they're sending money to us, that they're supporting us. So, you know, it's one of those things that.
Well, I guess I was just thinking that, you know, are they taking away from money that could potentially be given to main campus versus?
At the state level, that's the discussion right now to see what is the balance between having 30 plus institutions, including branches, versus concentrating and having, you know, fewer institutions that can be funded more. That's a discussion that I think is very valid, and I think it has merits. But I want to caution people when we're talking about re-engineering the university, that's the type of things that I would say that's not really something we control. As David said, this is something in statutes. I mean, you know, there's things that need to happen at the political, at the state level. What is it that we can do, that we can control, you know, based on these things from the outside? We can advocate if some of you want to advocate to close one of them, for example. But, you know, before getting all the data, I don't think closing many of these could, it may or it may not. In fact, that's what we're looking at, different models. There are some states where they concentrated and they did really well, and there's some states where they're distributed and they're doing well. You know, so I think we really need to be discussing what is the ultimate goal. Is it to save money? If it is to save money, the best thing to do is have one central thing with one president or chancellor, whatever, and get rid of everybody else, and everybody comes to this, that if it's to save money. But is that the best way to deliver education to the state of New Mexico. That's debate, or that's the debate that people are having.
I think one major advantage of the branch setup that we have now is it extends the UNM brand out into the state. Somebody else would compete for that space if we weren't there. So I think having the UNM brand and the reputation of the university extended out into the state is very good for us.
So I think, okay, you want to ask? Go ahead, ask it, and I'll try to be brief if it's for me.
I ran into a colleague of yours, Freeman Rabowski, at a conference in Baltimore in June, and he remembered his trip here fondly. And this is a question for you and Craig, Provost White, sorry. He, knowing kind of the struggles that our university and a lot of other universities are under, he made the joke that now might be a good time to pilfer away a faculty member that he'd been eyeing for quite some time. And I just my question is, you know,
I know he is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And the plan, what's your plan or ideas, given the external factors that kind of are affecting all universities, internal factors, and also things like retirements, what the plan is for recruiting and retaining good faculty?
Provost? That's an easy one.
Yeah, that's really. But yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's one of the tough things that we're facing right now in tough budget times, and as things vary across different states, if some are in better position than us, and they recognize the quality of our faculty, and they're coming to look here. One of the things that we've been trying to do this year is the budget is hopefully stabilizing, is working with the deans in terms of the hiring plans to be as open as we can to hire as many as we can. So not really saying no as much, but trying to find ways to make that happen. So also trying to be more aggressive on the replacement side where we can within their own budgets at the local level, the college level. But also where we can be supportive of creative ways, retention offers. And we've tried to do that, you know, and where there's faculty that are very key, the deans comes to the provost officers, ways in which we can work different arrangements, maybe even spousal hires, different ways to try and be creative to make that work out, work with the resources we have to try and achieve that. And I'll be honest, I mean, we haven't always been successful because it's a tough budget period right now, but we're doing the best we can, and I think we can do better recognizing our faculty, letting them know that we appreciate them and what the work that they're doing. I think part of what is here in New Mexico is just the implicit satisfaction of being here, the difference that we can make, and just kind of keep emphasizing those sorts of things.
And I think that's what I was going to get to, is that it's not always about the money. You know, we just had the advanced folks do a survey, and we're looking at how to address some of the discontent of what's happening. Much of this is really to try to solicit, you know, to talk to you. I mean, like what we're doing today. I mean, you know, I wish I had the answers, or I wish I could tell you, here's what we're going to do. It's not. It's really, this particular issue about faculty, staff satisfaction, including faculty flight and so on, it weighs heavily on us, that this is, you know, it took us a while, you know, when I say we got to 29% on this, that's because we also were able to hire faculty that focus on these areas as well as researchers. Well, some of those people are leaving, and some of the other people are leaving at this point. So it is something that I hope we can together, as we look into the long term, because in the short term, all we can do is these Band-Aids. You know, we can say, okay, well, you know what, you know, how about 5K more, or how about we give you, you know, a better, you know, paint for the lab or something. So, I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying to see what is it. And most of our faculty, frankly, are in that mode, is that they're asking for things for their programs and for their departments as much as they're saying, you know, give me 5, you know, or whatever it is. That's not really the point. Anyway, I wanted to thank you and to tell you that, you know, this is part of a long journey, and I hope that, you know, when we go through some of these, I didn't answer. There were only about 4 or 5 questions that came online. I will put them online with their answer, with the answers to the questions. But I'll be talking to you, and you know how to find me. Until the next time we talk, I hope that you stay safe and you keep the University of New Mexico as open arm and as open to different ideas as you possibly can. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.